June 1953. Following the death of Stalin on March 5th, a power struggle ensues in the Kremlin, pitting newly appointed Premier Georgy Malenkov against an entrenched group of hardliners. Malenkov begins making dovish overtures to the West, even suggesting that the reunification of Germany might be possible. The US and its NATO allies remain wary, however, while the hardliners in Moscow grumble and plot. Worried that harsh new economic policies announced by the East German government could spark catastrophic unrest among the German people, Malenkov urges East German leaders to relent. Malenkov's fears prove justified, as local demonstrations that erupt in early June cascade into widespread riots on the nights of June 16th and 17th. The Soviet response is swift, with tank divisions rolling in from the east to crush the nascent uprising. The US and NATO, already wary of the unexpected peace overtures coming out of Moscow, partially mobilize in response to the influx of Soviet armored divisions into East Germany. The hardliners in the Kremlin, fearing a bid by NATO to exploit the East German crisis and liberate the country, put the Soviet military in East Germany on hair-trigger alert. What eventually touches off the conflagration remains unknown. Perhaps the mistaken shoot-down of a Western aircraft in the approved air corridor to Berlin, or the firefight along the border that escalates into a major artillery duel and sets tanks on the move. Whatever the spark happens to be, come the morning of June 19th, Europe finds itself at war again. On June 21st, 1953, elements of the RAF No. 54 Squadron, equipped with Meteor F-8s, are being forward deployed to Geilenkirchen Air Base, West Germany, to take part in the defense of NATO and the Western Allies. And with that, welcome to Operation Red Torch, here in Strike Fighters 2 Europe, with the NATO 5 mod installed. This campaign, Operation Red Torch, is a fictional what-if scenario, a Cold War turned hot, and it's the first of several of these fictional conflicts that are spread throughout the entire Cold War, starting here in 1953 with the first one, and then finally culminating, I think sometime in the late 80s, or maybe even early 90s for the last one. And as usual, links for all of the mods that I'm using here in the game can be found below in the description, as well as links to any historical sources that I might use while researching different things here in the game. I'm really excited to finally get into these campaigns and fly with the RAF. We get to showcase and learn about some new aircraft that we haven't seen before in any of the other series, and I think in some cases are somewhat forgotten. This is an area of history that I don't know very much about, or at least I didn't before I started cramming research about 2 weeks ago. My knowledge of British military aviation basically went from the Battle of Britain, which I've always been very familiar with, all of the aircraft associated with that, to tornadoes. So, like, almost a 40-50 year span with Vulcan bombers and some other random British aircraft sprinkled in there in between. I knew about the Canberra, and I knew about the Fairey Gannet, of all things. Basically, aircraft, any British aircraft that we had at the Air Museum when I was growing up, I was at least familiar with them. But you can see that's a huge span of time. I couldn't have even given you an idea of when, the time frame of when different aircraft served in the RAF. And then when I was in high school, the Typhoon was just being introduced, although I'd only sort of recently heard that was the name they landed on, because when it was first introduced, it was the EFA 2000 or the EFA, or the Eurofighter. It had like 3 different names, and I also wasn't clear which countries would even be flying it. When I did find references in my travels to early Cold War British jets, they all seemed to look strange and have weird names, and I was never really sure how to feel about all that. But now that I've been immersing myself in documentaries and articles, these planes already feel like they're becoming familiar old friends, and I'm now excited with this series to be able to talk about their legacies and maybe introduce them to some new people who don't know anything about them, like I was. So let's get into the game here. We are here at Geilenkirchen Air Base with our Meteor F-8s of number 54 Squadron. You can't get much more west in West Germany than Geilenkirchen. We are here right on the Dutch border between Germany and the Netherlands. And this is another fun thing that this campaign has now forced me to do, and that is to give myself a crash course on continental geography. So that's super interesting to me, personally. I love putting geographical locations to names that I'm sort of familiar with and seeing where they fit in, in the big picture here. Okay, the date is June 21st, 1953. It's 2 days after the start of the war. Hostilities began on the 19th, and it's taken a couple days for number 54 Squadron to fly their Meteors in from their home base at this time at RAF Oldham in southern England. And it looks like we're ready to commence operations, so let's see what's in store for us today. Our mission objective is to suppress enemy air defense threats around Eisenach, destroy enemy radars and anti-air defense units operating in the vicinity. Call sign is Ramrod. We'll be taking 4 Meteor F-8s. Takeoff time 6 o'clock on the dot. Over the target by 6:28. Back landing here at Geilenkirchen at 7:09, so you can see we have about 30-minute long flights to get to and from the target, a little bit longer than what we're used to in some of the other series. Here's our aircraft for today, Ramrod 1. It's a Meteor F-8, like we've said. Serial number VZ471 Bravo. Paint scheme is RAF Silver High Speed, of course, of the Royal Air Force, number 54 Squadron. Our empty weight in this aircraft is 10,690 pounds. With a 100% fuel load, we have an additional 3,230 pounds, and a full ammo load for our 4 20mm cannons, 320 pounds. On the outboard stations, we're taking 16 RP-3 60-pound air-to-ground rockets for a weight of 1,300 pounds, with the pylons adding an additional 40 pounds, and we have our 175-gallon ventral drop tank. It's not even a centerline tank because it can't be dropped. It's the large bulge that we'll see under the fuselage of the Meteor. So that's giving us an additional 175 gallons, and it is affixed, so we cannot drop it. And that's a weight of 1,610 pounds. So we have a total takeoff weight 17,190 pounds. And that is the same for all 4 aircraft. We all have the same loadout, so same weights. Here is our map, and there is a lot going on here. Down here to the south, we have the Alps and the borders between West Germany and Switzerland and Austria. To the east, we have what was, at the time, Czechoslovakia, and up to the north of that, we have East Germany and Poland. And they both border the Baltic Sea up to the north of that, with the islands of Denmark just beyond that. The main peninsula of Denmark, and then south of that is West Germany, where we can see just an absolutely huge amount of Allied NATO fighter squadrons packed into all these airfields across the country. Zooming in on our own little neighborhood, our little slice here of Germany, Geilenkirchen Airfield is just west of this big blob that we see here. This is the Cologne and Bonn metropolitan area, Bonn being the capital of West Germany, and that's down to the south there. Cologne is next up, and then mixed into this whole blob to the north of that, we've got the various cities of Dusseldorf, Essen, Wuppertal, and Dortmund. And those are all along the banks of the Rhine River here, flowing north out of the hills into the Netherlands on its way out to the Atlantic Ocean. So here at the airbase itself, here's number 54 Squadron. We have a modest strength of 16 aircraft with a supply of 81. So like the opening said, not the entire squadron has deployed, but elements of it. So maybe about half or two-thirds of the squadron have come over to Germany, with several other aircraft and pilots still in reserve back in England. With us on the base is number 74 Squadron, also Meteors. Number 92 Squadron, which are flying Sabre Mark IVs. These are the British F-86 Sabres, but they're built out of Canada, and they dropped the F-86 designation to simply be Sabres. And then we have number 3 Squadron, which is also flying Sabre Mark IV. So we've got 2 squadrons of Meteors, 2 squadrons of Sabres here at Geilenkirchen. And if we take a quick tour through Germany for just a minute, bear with me, I just want to give you a general idea of where the Allied forces are distributed throughout the country. So just to our southeast here at Norvenech Air Base, these are some of the Meteor and F-84 Thunderjets of the Belgian Air Force. So just here on the outskirts of Cologne. Way down here to the south at Freiburg, we have La France. These are the French squadrons. So we have the MD-450 Ouragan, or Ouragan, if you want me to be pretentious about it. And you can see their strength. They actually have 24 aircraft. So a huge contingent of French fighters down in the south. And those are sprightly little Dassault fighters. The name means hurricane in French. And here's their ground attack squadrons. They also operate F-84s as well as Vampire FB-5s. So supplementing their homegrown fighters with American and British-built models as well. And speaking of Americans, up here at Zweibrücken and Ramstein, we do have the major contingent of deployed American squadrons. So here we see a mixture of F-84s, F-86s, some Canadian squadrons in the mix here as well. Saw some Canadair Mark VI Sabres, as well as some RF-80 Shooting Star recon units. But this is sort of the main thrust of the American contingent here around Ramstein and Zweibrücken. Moving up to the north of that, we have another mix of a bunch of what looks like American, maybe some Belgian or RAF squadrons. It's hard for me to tell at a glance if it's RAF or Belgian because they just sort of use the same numbering conventions, and I'm not familiar with them enough to know what the nationality might be from just a glance. Up here at Twente, or maybe Twente Air Base, we have the Dutch. This is actually within the Netherlands, right along the border. And we can see they're flying F-84s for ground attack and Meteor F-8s. These were license-built Meteors by Fokker, so the aircraft were built locally in the Netherlands. Out here to the east at Buchenberg Air Base, we've got a big grouping of F-84s, so I don't know who those belong to. They could be Dutch, could be more of the Belgians. Again, I can't be sure just by looking. But up next door at Diefolds Air Base, we have more Meteors, so those could be Dutch, or we're getting back into RAF squadrons. I know there's a bunch of RAF right up this line of air bases to the north at Wilhelmshaven on the Atlantic Ocean coast there. Yeah, and I'm seeing Sabres mixed back in there again. So these are the rest of our RAF forces holding it down up in the north. We get some real hot shits out here at Fastberg. These look like the Vampire and Venom RAF squadrons, so they're all at their own little base, all by themselves, the fancy pants out here at Fastberg. So that sort of gives you a general overview of how our NATO forces are deployed through West Germany, and now finally let's get down to our actual mission. We'll be taking out of Geilenkirchen out to the east, climbing up over Cologne and Wuppertal out to waypoint 3, which is going to be just south of Arnsberg there, in this big sort of rolling hills expanse known as the Bergisches Land. So we'll be flying right over that as we hit waypoint 3. Assigned altitude is 12,000 feet, but I'm going to climb up to 20,000 for cruise. We continue making our way out east to our initial point, waypoint 4, which we will be hitting in about 26.5 minutes. This is basically right over the Iron Curtain, right on the border between West and East Germany. So these are the front lines. Again, our target is the city of Eisenach, so we should be able to see it nice and clear at this point from 20,000 feet. So as we hit the waypoint, we'll roll over to the right and make our way in towards the target area, waypoint 5. We do have a small paved Soviet auxiliary airfield, Haina Air Base, just to the east of the city, but there's nobody stationed there that we know of, so I don't think we'll have to worry about very close fighters. There may be fighters, but they'll be coming in from further away, so other than ground defenses, that airbase should be no factor for us. We do see here we have a huge unit of T-54 tanks, and according to the remarks, they're conducting an offensive operation into Fulda. We see that the U.S. 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment, with M47 Patton tanks, they're actually holding this crossroads here at the city of Bad Hersfeld. And the 14th Cav is down at Fulta itself. So this is the city they're going to be trying to repel an invasion down here, hoping to keep the Soviets out of West Germany. After we clobber those air defenses, then we're climbing back up to altitude, heading out of the area to waypoint 6, passing right over the top of this battlefield here. And then it's out west to waypoint 7, and then we begin our descent back into Geilenkirchen. So one more thing to look at before we go, and that is our pilot roster. And also, time to introduce everyone to our swashbuckling knight of the sky, Pilot Officer Reginald Hickenbottom, callsign Teapot. And he and that mustache are going to be the scourge of the air above Germany. As you've probably gathered, the picture is of an actual RAF pilot. That's Roger Morwood, 1-0. That's misspelled underneath the picture, and that might have been my fault when I named it. He was a Battle of Britain pilot, flying Hurricanes and Spitfires through the war, and he remained in the RAF until 1957 when he retired. And he lived until 2014, and at 98 years old, he was one of the last surviving Battle of Britain pilots. But he's such a dapper chap, and I really do love that mustache, so I decided that he's going to be my guy. And if you're a fan of British comedy, you may notice that he bears a certain striking resemblance to one Lord Flashheart. So, Pilot Officer Hickenbottom is in Ramrod 1 on his very first mission. Flying my wingman, Ramrod 2, is going to be Pilot Officer James Allard, and he's got 3 combat missions, 2 air-to-ground kills. Leading the second element in Ramrod 3 is Pilot Officer Paddy Botter, possible relation to Douglas Botter, another RAF World War II ace and pilot of the Battle of Britain, and he had no legs. He had 2 artificial legs. He lost them in an airplane crash in the 30s. I read his biography in the 3rd or the 4th grade, because that's the kind of reading material we had in my house when I was a kid. It was called Reach for the Sky. It was written in the 50s. So I've known his story for a long time, but because of doing research for this, I only just now learned that he was a household name in Britain. And there was a companion movie to the book that also came out in the 50s. I never knew. I thought I was one of the few people that remembered this guy. Maybe I still am in America, but if you're British and you like aviation, you probably know the name. Sort of a bastard, but quite a story, so worth checking out. But anyways, we have maybe some relation to him, maybe a nephew or something, here in the squadron with us, so he is my number 3. And flying number 4, Tail End Charlie, going to be Pilot Officer Neville Franklin, and he actually has 8 combat missions and 1 air-to-air kill, so we do have a small smattering of pilots that have gotten kills, so maybe these guys would have been in the final days of World War II as it closed out. That is a possibility. We're only a few years removed from the end of that war with this one starting up. Okay, we did it! We got through it. I know that was a lot, and it's because it's the first episode. This is how all the series start. I take a really long time to make sure that we set up the campaign and we understand what's going on, and from here on out the briefings will always be much shorter. Today we had a lot to get through, and we got through it, and we are ready to go to begin our first mission out over Germany in our RAF Meteor. So let's head out to the tarmac and give the old girl a once-over, and strap it on and go see what sort of trouble we can find out over the Iron Curtain. Alright, flight controls are free and clear. We're cleared for takeoff, runway 9 out of Geilenkirchen. We've got the Dutch border behind us, and we're going to be departing straight out over the capital region out up ahead. Taking a look around the cockpit of our Meteor for the first time. Pretty simple controls and dials. Nothing too crazy. We got RPM over to the right, VSI in the middle, HSI in the middle, a little bit of airspeed and altitude off to the left, including a Mach meter, which still would have been a novel gauge at the time. That would have been new and exciting still. Looks like we've got a 10 or 15 knot headwind right down the chute here today, so perfect. Let's get going, throttle to full. Watch those RPM gauges slowly spool up. Nice, slow 1950s spool times. And at about 1450 RPM, we are at full power. Airspeed is alive. There's 50 knots. 100 knots. Looking for 120 to start rotating. There we go, there's 120. Pulling back on the stick as we reach 150. The plane is going to slide right off the ground, and she does. Gear up. And flaps up as we climb out away into the morning sun. We're up over 200 miles an hour now. We'll switch over to waypoint 3, but we're not going to head directly there. We've got 3 more wingmen in the back that we have to get marshaled up with us, so I'm going to go ahead and do a circuit over the airfield. A single circuit. We'll just do the pattern once and keep it at full power and continue climbing, or start our climb up to 20,000 feet. As we're coming around, there is the city of Geilenkirchen itself, just to the north of the airfield. And you can see that demarcation there where the end of the airport grounds end. That's basically the Dutch border. So that's Netherlands all on the far side. And 3's up, taking a look. Okay, I can just see him there against the apron. So 3 is up, 4 will be rolling in a second. And I want to climb between 250 and 300 knots, so I'm going to pitch up to bring that speed back down a little bit. There we go, we're just over the line, so we are in the Netherlands right now. Crossing 7,000 feet as I make my turn back around, and 4 is airborne. So we'll just complete the circle as we're just about to hit 10,000 feet, and we'll get on course for waypoint 3 and continue to climb up to 20,000 feet over Cologne and the greater metropolitan area. Today we are flying the Gloucester Meteor, the Royal Air Force's very first jet fighter, but also the only Allied jet that saw combat in World War II. It fought MiGs with the Royal Australian Air Forces during the Korean War, flew with the Argentinian Air Force during 2 revolts in 1955, and was used by both Israel and Egypt against each other during the Suez Crisis of 1956. Development of the Meteor began even before the start of World War II, when an engineer named Frank Whittle formed Power Jets Limited in 1936. Whittle had been shopping around his radical ideas on jet propulsion since 1931, with little interest. Whittle's first prototype engine began running in 1937, finally catching the interest of the Air Ministry. The Air Ministry was the department of the British government that managed the Royal Air Force, and they began allocating funds to Whittle and his jets. Frank Whittle found another ally in George Carter, chief designer for the Gloucester Aircraft Company. In 1939, Power Jets Limited and Gloucester formed a partnership to manufacture a test aircraft. A small, single-engined plane called the E-2829 flew in 1941, proving the feasibility of jet power. The single engine was found to be underpowered, so when Gloucester submitted a design for a production aircraft, it included 2 wing-mounted engines. Originally named the Thunderbolt, the name was changed during development to avoid confusion with the American P-47s that were already flying in the RAF under the names Thunderbolt Mark I and Mark II. The first combat variant, the Meteor F-1, was first flown in January of 1944. Due to ongoing test programs to understand jet propulsion, it took another 7 months before the Meteor finally arrived in squadron service. The first squadron to take delivery was 616 Squadron, and the first operational sortie flew at the end of July of 1944, intercepting V-1 buzz bombs targeting southern England. Only 20 F-1 Meteors were built, with the improved Mark III variant delivered to 616 Squadron in December of 1944. The following month, 616 was deployed to continental Europe, flying from bases in Belgium, Holland, and finally Germany. Though the pilots were hoping to dogfight Me-262s, the two jets never met in the air, and the Meteors flew ground attack and armed reconnaissance missions. The Meteors were often misidentified as Me-262s, though, and were shot at by friendly gunners, so the aircraft were painted all white for high visibility identification. After the conclusion of World War II, the Meteor F-4 entered service and was exported to Argentina, Belgium, Denmark, Egypt, and the Netherlands. In 1945, a Meteor set a world speed record of 606 miles per hour, broken by another Meteor the following year at 616 miles an hour. The jet also set international speed and time-to-height records. While jet development in the 1950s and 60s meant that records were quickly and routinely broken, the thing that cements the legacy of the Meteor was its engines. Frank Whittle and his jet engine design had been first improved upon by auto manufacturer Rover, but when Whittle and Rover had a falling out, Rolls-Royce took over the contract to supply engines. Improving again on Whittle's design, they produced the RB-37 Derwent, which would go on to power all variants of the Meteor. The Derwent was enlarged to become the Rolls-Royce Nene, the engine that essentially powered the entire first generation of Cold War jets around the world. The Nene powered the de Havilland Vampire, the French Dassault Ouragan. It was produced under license in the US as the J-42, powering the F-9F Panther, and it was reverse engineered by the Soviet Union to become the VK-1 that powered MiG-15s and 17s. The Nene was physically too large to fit in Meteor nacelles, so it was scaled back down and called the Derwent 5, coming back full circle to the engine that it was derived from. The model of Meteor that we are flying today is the F-8, a vast improvement over the F-4 that entered RAF service in 1949. The F-8 had an all-new tail section, a longer fuselage, Derwent 8 engines, structural strengthening, a new canopy with better visibility, and was the first Meteor fitted with an ejection seat. F-8s of No. 77 Squadron of the Royal Australian Air Force shot down 6 MiG-15s during the Korean War. They also flew thousands of ground attack missions against the North Koreans and Chinese. Almost 4,000 Meteors were built between 1943 and 1955. In addition to the day fighter variants, 6 additional variants were used for photo recon and night fighting. They were armed with 4 20mm cannons and had wing hardpoints for small bomb and rocket loads. Besides the Royal Air Force, they flew with Argentina, Australia, Syria, France, Israel, Belgium, Brazil, Denmark, the Netherlands, Egypt, France, South Africa, and Ecuador. Today, 5 aircraft are still airworthy and continue to fly. Alright, so we just hit waypoint 3. So we're turning over, heading for waypoint 4. Out to our right, that big expanse, that's the Bergisches Land. And that's a low mountain range region, very rural. Rolling hills, woods, small farms, lots of little rivers and lakes. And we can see that stretches way down to the south for many miles. And as we're coming on to course, we are just touching 20,000 feet, which is my target altitude. At 20,000 feet, if I set 1,200 RPM on the engines, that gives me a cruise speed of around 350 miles an hour. Our target is the city of Eisenach. In 1521, this is where Martin Luther translated the Bible from Greek into German for the first time, which was a huge step for both the Protestant Reformation of Europe and towards standardizing the German language. The city is also the birthplace of Johann Sebastian Bach, born there in 1685. In more modern times, in 1896, Germany's third automobile factory opened in the city. BMW took over the plant in 1928, making it the company's very first car factory. During World War II, car production stopped, and the factory switched to military motorcycle and aircraft engine production. After the war, the city came under Soviet control, and the factory became EMW, or Eisenach Motor Works. The company was owned by the state of East Germany and returned to building automobiles again. There's waypoint 4 out to our right at our 1 o'clock low there. That's the city of Eisenach, and that is our target. I can just see the Haina airfield beyond it. So as we move in, we're going to be looking for these anti-air gun targets on what looked like the east side, according to the map. So we're going to get closer, and I'm going to keep an eye out for either a target or some sort of concentration of guns on the east side. Squadron's still with me, and I'm going to start rolling in, and I'm going to start looking. We'll bring the throttle back and start our descent towards the city. I'm seeing a couple big pads of asphalt or tarmac or something. Oh yeah, look at that. We got some big facilities there. See tanks out to the right, and what maybe looks like a warehouse or factory complex here. This actually might be the ex-BMW plant. Where's 2? Alright, we're looking. We're looking. As soon as I get a target, I'm going to start ordering the wingmen to attack. KS-19, we got something. And it's off to the right. Flight 1, attack my target. And we got a fuel truck out front to attack my target. And we got... Whoa, we got tracers coming up! Jesus Christ! Flak exploding all around us, too. Okay, I'm off, because that's suicide to keep heading in. But yes, 2's got a solid hit right in the middle of that facility, and 3 as well. So we've destroyed 2 targets already. We have an S-60 on the backside of the BMW plant. Let's have 2 circle around and come back at that. Looks like everybody is firing at me. Got any targets down here? Oh, we got puffs of smoke. We got another flak gun right down here in that little park or whatever that is. More tracers coming in from that S-60 on the road. So I'm just acting as a FAC right now, because if everyone's going to keep shooting at me, they're not shooting at my wingmen, and I can order them to come around and attack. So we're just going to keep doing this for the moment. I'm going to circle. Remind 2 to attack that target. And here he comes. 2's in hot. Still shooting at me. Good. That's a good sign. There's somebody coming in at my 1 o'clock. Maybe number 2. We have some... oh, somebody's getting shot at out ahead of us there. And I hear rockets off. There they are. Oh, yes! Perfect. Impact right into that gun. We got another flak gun down here. It's an M1939. Let's get Flight 1 in on that. And I'm just jinking my ass off right now. Right over the city. Oh, there's somebody. On their way out to circle around, I hope. Alright, looks like the guns are aimed at somebody else right now, so I've got my rockets selected from before. Let's actually head in on this M1939. Maybe we can take it out ourselves and get rid of these rockets. Right in over the BMW plant. Rockets away. Oh, huge explosion. We got the gun, and there was that whole line of ZIL trucks there. I bet we probably knocked some of them off too. So I've switched over to cannon now. So we are ready for some strafing, and we got the call that we have accomplished the mission. So let's just hang out for a few more minutes. We saw that other flak gun over here in that park. I want to chase that down, and then maybe we'll get the guys back together and bug out of here. Where is this thing? I think I see him. Whoa. Yep, I see him. And that's a hit. He is done for. So that's another gun. 300 miles an hour over the center of Eisenach. Knife edge past this building. Uh-oh, wingmen way to the north for some reason. Let's get them back here. Rejoin the formation, please. I'm not sure where they're going. But I don't want them attacking the airbase defenses. So let's order them to specifically target these things. Here's another 1939. 3 attack that target, and I'll keep them occupied. So you guys get your asses in fast, please. Look at this flak everywhere. Holy shit. Whew. I think the good thing is that we're early enough. 1953. I don't think a lot of it is being radar guided. Although, actually, I take that back. It might be. But I haven't seen any radars here specifically in Eisenach, so they may just be, ooh, jockeying the air brakes to try to stay out of the path of these fucking tracers here. Woo-wee! They are getting closer and closer. But I think these are not radar-guided guns at the moment. Although there may be radars elsewhere. Let's dive under those. Here is 2 and 4 coming in from the north. Hopefully taking out these targets in just a few seconds. Come on, you guys, where are you? They're still trying to hit me, now's the time. We have a call for bandits! Shit, I was afraid this was gonna happen. We have a MiG-15 right close. It looks like I'm taking fire. Pulling over hard and diving down underneath to get away from this guy. Fucking A, where did they come from? Right down towards the city. 2 is off. Let's get everyone back on my wing. We gotta reassign them back to air. We don't care about the ground anymore. And there's that MiG. He's on the far side of the city, pulling in behind me, or maybe the wingman. We've got the Hispano selected, set to air on the gun site, and we're sliding in right behind this guy. We are really slow, though, over the city. Pulling around behind him. Oh no, he's chasing my wingman. I'm not sure which one. Let's level out and try to catch up to him before he does some damage. Come on, everybody, get back in formation. Circle back around. Oh, that was a friendly. Passing left to right. Come on, who are you, wingman? Circle back. He's at your 6 o'clock high. Ground control, sending help. Come on, come on. Oh no, MiG is firing. Oh, and we've got a wingman down. Meteor coming apart over at Eisenach. Son of a bitch. This guy's super close. Let's go up over the top. A little bit of high yo-yo. We were not able to get there in time. God damn it. Now this guy is low over the farms. Oh, we're pulling in right behind him. A little bit of lag. Pursuit incoming friendly. Wow. That was a close one. Hi, yo-yo. We are right behind this guy. Firing. Air brakes to keep us behind him. Yes! Clipped his wing. First MiG kill. Of the war. Look at that. And it's a Soviet. Those are red stars on that bastard. Got you good, fucker. Okay, we got another MiG-15 right in the neighborhood, so no time to sit on our laurels. Oh, there he goes, impacting. We just lost pieces off our fucking plane. And we got another MiG. He's right there, 6 o'clock. Flight 1, engage air. 2, cover my ass. Toot sweet. This guy's right on me. There we go, he just passed over to the right. No, he didn't. He's still behind me. That was something else. Okay, air brakes triggered. Let's bleed some speed and slow down, try to scissor this guy. He's down underneath me now, but I'm pulling... Oh, shit! Holy fuck. That was super lucky. Had a loss of control. We went into a spin super low and super slow, and I was able to pull us out of it. And we are under fire. Oh, MiG fire coming in. He's right on our 6. That's another meteor underneath. And he slams into the field. Oh, was that a wingman or a friendly? I don't know who that was. We may have just lost a wingman randomly crashing into the field. This MiG is still on my ass. We are goddamn under 100 knots. Full flaps before we put it in another spin again. And we are just floating like a leaf up here at the top of this maneuver. Meteor on the MiG's 6 o'clock. He's taking fire. And another meteor. We've got a whole gaggle of them. These might be the friendlies. He clipped that MiG. Look at him. Oh, he's going right down. Right into that field. That is the end of MiG number 2. Taken out by friendly reinforcement forces. Let's get Ramrod back together. Who is this? Oh, nope, that's another friendly. The air's just lousy with meteors right now. We definitely lost one wingman. Did we lose another to that field? I'm still not sure. Well, 3 is still with us, apparently. What is going on? We're only... Oh, son of a bitch. How fucking long have my brakes been out? Oh, alright. Build up some speed and let's start climbing. Yeah, look, we're over... Now we're reaching 400 knots. After wallowing at like less than 250 that whole time. God damn it. Ugh. I think my brakes were out for a lot longer than I realized. Maybe after the first MiG kill? Not sure. Well, they're in now. And we're actually getting some speed up and we're climbing back to altitude as we're heading down south. Out of Eisenach. There's waypoint 6. Turning over to waypoint 7. And the closest bad guys are more than 50 miles away, 12 o'clock. So plenty far away. Maybe that was only a flight of 2 MiGs over Eisenach. Thankfully. Or it could be that the other meteors got some more kills while I was dogfighting with that one. But holy moly, how about that spin? That is the worst possible thing that could have happened, and I felt it coming too. The plane was so slow, we were getting stall buffet, and I was just pulling back on the stick more and more, just trying to hold it just enough to not have that happen, and then the wing snapped right over. Luckily, employed some immediate stall recovery procedures, and we were able to... We only went around once or twice, I think, and we were able to pull it out before I buried myself into an East German field, like that other meteor. Oh, man, okay, safely up at 20,000 feet again. Letting the speed come up to 350, and then we'll pull back to that 1200 RPM for cruise. Friendly's taking damage somewhere in the theater, not sure where. Nearest bad guys are still 11 o'clock, more than 50 miles out, and they're IL-28s. Maybe coming home after a strike somewhere. Looks like 3 or 4 is pulling in behind me on my tail. We got 2 with us. And 3. So it was number 4 that got shot down, Pilot Officer Franklin. Here we got some MiG-15 BIS. These are the Faggot Bs. We saw Faggot As earlier. And we have an American F-84 firing at an IL-28 on its way out of the target area. Oh, and he scored some hits. Look at that, chunks coming off. Oh, yes! Ivan's on fire. And it looks like Mr. F-84 is out of ammo. Oh, and now down he goes! Soviet pilot punches out. And this IL-28 is on its way back to Earth. Alright, we're getting calls for bingo fuel. From 3. Bandits? What? What the hell? We have IL-28s passing directly underneath us. Tally-ho, let's go get them! Alright, I got 2 down low. Air brakes out to keep us manageable in the dive as we slide in behind these guys, but we don't want to forget and leave them out again. Oh, tailguns are firing. Yes, that's a hit, and he's on fire. We are good. Peeling off and away while the wingmen come in for hopefully the second wave of the attack. So he's spinning in. I got him. And he's breaking up as he goes down as we barrel roll up over the top. Targeting this second Beagle now. We'll just slide down on him. Whoop, and we got a friendly. Circling right in front, we'll let him take the shot. Oh, and it's a good one! Right engine is on fire, and he's splashed. So wow, a complete happenstance encounter. 2 IL-28s on their way back home, unfortunately, happened to pass right underneath our flight path there for 2 more kills on our inaugural mission. And the next closest guy is now 9 miles out to my left. But fuel is becoming critical, so I'm not going to chase him. It's only a couple thousand feet to 20K, so we're just going to climb back up there again. Because now I need to save as much fuel as I possibly can. I think those air brakes were out at the beginning of the mission way longer than I thought they were, and I think I burned off a lot more fuel than I should have by just keeping it up at full throttle. And that may come back to bite me in the ass, unfortunately. Oh yeah, fuel gauges are getting really low really fast. But there's 20,000, wing leveler, and we're going to pull those throttles way back. Now the problem is this plane is still new enough to me. I mean, I've done a bunch of training in it, but I don't have a sense of how fast it guzzles gas once we get low on the gauges, and it's we're losing fuel faster than I was sort of anticipating, so bad thing there. Trying to get my bearings here. Looks like we're just north of Gießen, the city of Gießen out to our left. That means that Bergisches Land is out to my right, and we're following Route 4 up to the city of Siegen. And I'm glancing nervously at those fuel gauges once again. I think that's Siegen out to our right there. Yeah, it is. So the city of Bonn is almost due west right there. That's the Rhine River that we can see, and then we're back into that Cologne area up and beyond it. So we're fairly close. And look how fast those stupid needles are dropping. If we run out of gas, we may be close enough to glide in. If it comes to that. There's waypoint 8. Heading back in. It'd be a very inglorious end to our first mission to run out of fuel and have to crash land in a field somewhere. But we got options. I've pulled the power way back. It sort of seems manageable. I think we're going to make it. I think we'll be okay. We are actually quite close to the Kolvan airfield there, just north of Bonn. So, I mean, that's a good emergency field. If it looks like we're not going to make it, then maybe that's a place to set down. And we've got the Narvanich field on the far side as well. Oh, we are getting danger low on fuel, so let's just let's pull the throttle all the way back and save some gas and start a glide down to the airfield here. We'll do a nice gentle 2,000 foot per minute descent. So we'll save some of that altitude in case we do run out of gas and we have to glide. We'll still have a little bit of altitude to play with. And let's just send the rest of Ramrod Flight home because there's no point in them hanging out with me. If they can make it back to the airbase, then be my guest. You guys go ahead. But I am on fumes here. In fact, Kolnvon is looking very enticing. I can just see the Rhine River appearing out there at 11 o'clock. As it flows up to the north. Speed's getting real low. Okay, make sure we're not going to get jumped by any MiGs trying to get back to base. But they are more than 50 miles well behind me, so no problem there. There's the Rhine. I think that's Bonn right there, capital city, West Germany. You can see the river running through it before it turns back to the north, heading up through Cologne. There is the airfield. Oh, it's right there. It's a big one, too. You know what? We are on fumes. I'm diverting. We're not going to make it back to Geilenkirchen, so I'm going to divert over here to Kolnvon. We'll just land with some dignity and some engines running, and we can politely ask for just a few gallons of petrol, and then I can fly back home while saving face. It's the RAF. They're Englishmen. They'll be very polite, and they'll let me they'll let me drink up a few gallons of their fuel. Yeah, so we're just going to drop the nose and we're going to drop down through these last couple of thousand feet down to pattern altitude. No time for an overhead 360, I'm afraid, so we'll just make a traditional straight-in approach. There we actually get a good look at the offending air brakes that I kind of screwed myself with today. They're very small slats that pop out from the roots of the wing. Clearly they're not all that effective if I was doing maneuvers at full throttle with them out, and I was still getting up to like 300 knots. Effective enough to make me drink up all my gas. City of Bonn still out to my left there. We just passed over Route 3. One of the national highways out to my right. So we're looking for a wheel drop speed of 170, flaps out at 150, for a stall speed of 100 in this airplane. And I've just cut the throttle and we're going to start bleeding some of this speed off. Let's throw it into a little bit of a crab here. Let the fuselage act as a big sail and bleed off some of that speed. There we go, dropping down. There's 210. 200, I'm full left rudder, using the aileron to compensate, and then we'll pull out of it as we are... Oops, just a little bit fast. We were 10 knots fast there. There we go. There's 170, if I can read the damn gauge right. Landing gear is down. Flaps are in takeoff. Come on. There we go. Second notch flaps had to wait for under 150. There we go. Looking for an approach of around 120 for that stall speed of 100 as we come over. And I'm going to put the brakes out so we can keep the engine spooled up because of its very slow response time. If we need the power suddenly, we can't wait for it to be spooling for the next 10 seconds. But things are looking quite good. We're right on center line. Here comes the threshold. And the engines are still running, so all is right with the world. Stall buffet right as we touch down. Perfect! Perfect, I say. And we'll just pull everything in and hit the wheel brakes. We'll take this taxiway, get off the runway as soon as possible. And we'll flag a passing fuel truck and top off the tanks. And we're clear of the runway. Excelente! Pop open the canopy with Shift 0. We succeeded in our mission. We had some very successful ground attacks. Some good wingman coordination with those. And we got at least 3 air-to-air kills. So right out of the gate, putting a dent in the Soviet MiG inventory. Alright, I'll see you back over in the debriefing room at Geilenkirchen, and we'll go through this mission in detail. Right, jolly good show, chaps. We were to suppress the enemy air defense threats around Eisenach, destroy enemy radars and air defense units operating in the vicinity. Flight time was 54 minutes and 10 seconds, so quite a long mission compared to what I've been used to over in the Vietnam series. Result was 5 primary targets were destroyed. Those are ground targets, by the way. 3 additional enemy aircraft were destroyed. So, 1 MiG and 2 IL-28s, if my math is serving me correctly, or my memory serving correctly. Unfortunately, 1 Meteor was lost, 2 Meteor were damaged, so that's sort of surprising, but I think that's, we did see, when I was looking out my 6 o'clock, we got hit by flak, I think. There was like pieces or something that came off the airplane. They sort of looked like control surfaces, but I wasn't missing any, so I don't know what it was exactly, but I think we were one of the Meteors that were damaged, and somebody else took a few holes as well. Rating of success for a score of 1450, which is, that's a lot. That's a high score. And maybe more importantly, the enemy offensive into Hamburg has been repulsed. Huzzah. Alright, over to the stats. Pilot Officer Hickenbottom fired 200 rounds from my 20mm Hispano Mark II cannons, which I think was my entire onboard complement. So I may have fired my last round at that IL-28 as we were peeling off. Fired 16 of my RP-3 rockets. I got 4 kills with the rockets, which is especially nice to see because as we were rolling in on the dive, I realized that I didn't know exactly where the rockets were going to land because I wasn't familiar enough with them to know where their flight path was going to go in relation to the gun sight. But I just waited till we were super close and I fired. So I definitely hit that gun, and I must have taken out 3 other maybe those trucks that were nearby. Our number 2, Pilot Officer Allard, he fired all of his rockets, 92 rounds from his guns. He got 1 gun kill and 7 rocket kills. And Pilot Officer Botter, he fired 8 of his rockets, so only half his complement for 1 kill. So that must mean that Pilot Officer Allard is the one that got the IL-28 kill, so that was my number 2. And Pilot Officer Franklin, who was unfortunately shot down right over the city, never fired any of his weapons. So we look over at the roster, and we see that my first combat mission, I do have 2 air-to-air kills. That's 1 MiG-15, 1 IL-28, and 5 air-to-ground kills. So we're off to a smashing start. I like to see that very much. Pilot Officer James Allard, for his 4th mission, there's his first air-to-air kill. So that is exciting to see. It's not easy boring in on the backside of an IL-28. Their 20mm tail guns are very accurate and very deadly. So we did a good job today not getting shot down by those airplanes, because they are not to be trifled with. And Patty Botter, still at 1 and 3, and we see here Pilot Officer Neville Franklin, unfortunately, missing in action. So on the one hand, not great news, but also not terrible news, because he could have been outright killed. We don't know that for sure. He's just missing at the moment. And we were right next to the front line, so it's possible that he could make his way back, cross over into West Germany, and be returned to us. So we'll have to keep an eye out for Franklin. Maybe he'll make a miraculous return. Here's the log, 6:24 and 30 seconds. Those S-60 AAAs started firing 57mm tracers at me as we were diving in on Eisenach, and that's when I had to peel off to avoid being shot down, because that was really close. That could have been where I was damaged as well. I mean, those things were whizzing right by the canopy. But luckily I had my wingman with me, so just a few seconds later, here's Pilot Officer Allard. He's firing his rockets at that S-60. And Pilot Officer Botter firing his rockets at the other S-60 that was within the BMW plant, or the EMW plant. And they both killed their targets and did a bunch of damage besides. Those ZIL 157 trucks, look at that, there was, Allard blew up 5 of them just because they were parked near where he was shooting, so huge amount of damage right there in the center of the factory. And then for the next several minutes, every asshole and his brother are shooting everything they can at us over downtown as we circled around. Allard comes back around, firing the last of his rockets and destroying that S-60 that was on the backside of the facility. We watched that happen. That was a good hit. And at 6:26:46, this was my rocket run. We destroyed 3 fuel trucks and the 1939 AAA that I was actually aiming at. So not just MiGs, huge dent in the ZIL 157 inventory of the Soviet Union today. That'll make them think twice. Okay, so if we jump ahead here to the important stuff, at 6:30:44, MiG-15s finally arrived on the scene and fired 37 and 23mm cannons at Pilot Officer Franklin. He was hit by a 37mm, blowing off his right wing, and he was shot down near Eisenach. We were in a daisy chain. I was actually behind that MiG-15 trying to close, but I was not able to get to him fast enough before he hit Pilot Officer Franklin. However, moments later, I got my revenge. Pilot Officer Hickenbottom, 6:31:28, fired 24 rounds at the Fajot, hitting it and blowing off its right wing, and he spun in, and we watched him go down into that field. And that was a Soviet-piloted MiG-15. And very embarrassing to admit, but somewhere in all of this, I popped the air brakes and left him out this entire time, apparently. Still cannot believe that I did that. 6:31:51, we've got the second MiG-15 closing, firing cannons at me, and he was super close. That's where we were scissoring back and forth, and then I put the damn Meteor into a spin, which I was expertly and smartly able to recover from in a minimal amount of time and loss of altitude. And shortly thereafter, somewhere right around here in the 6:32 or 33 time frame, we watched that Allied Meteor bury itself out in the field, and then one of his wingmen shot down that MiG-15. And then down here, 6:41:17, a very surprising encounter, and this is where I'm just putting a crap ton of rounds into this IL-28. Burst into flames, and down it went, 6:41:30. And Allard came in right behind and finished off the second one, 6:41:54. Okay, so that is the end of this mission, our first sortie against the Soviets and the Warsaw Pact. And I think overall we did quite well today. Join me next time to see how the boys of number 54 Squadron continue getting on as the war heats up and will put this meteor through its paces.